First step you'll have to do is to remove the Robinson head screw from the bottom of the extrusion. At this step you'll need an Allen key or an Allen key wrench to remove the upper bolt. The next step will be to remove the 4 bolts on the motor cover with a 5/16 inch nut driver. When installing the bolts to lock the jacks down, one of the ways that you can do this is by accessing the back end of the motor where the manual override turn switch is. You'll use a 1/2 inch wrench to do this. Attach the 1/2 inch wrench onto the drive shaft. Counterclockwise is down, clockwise is up, and that's the movement of the jacks. You go counterclockwise, and do note that the motor is a 40:1 ratio, and it may take a couple of turns. About 3 full revolutions is about how much it will take in order for you to come into contact to lock the jacks. That way you will be able to put the jack lock in place. When installing the bolts, you should be able to see directly through the hole. Once you're at this point, install the bolt through the hole, and at this point you'll need to go back to the motor and give it about a turn and a half in order counterclockwise in order for you to lock the bolt in place. You may have to check a couple times, but it is best to do this so that you know that your tension is fine on the bolt and that the jack will not move and the bolt will not fall out while working on the motor side of the chains. Another way that you can lock down the jacks in place so that they will not move if you do not have bolts handy is by using a set of vice grips. All you want to do is just latch on to the bottom of the jack, and once you're locked in place the jack will not go anywhere and you're set to work on the removing. Once we're in this position we can start removing the bolts. Then you can move on to removing the 7/16 inch bolts that hold the chain guides, which are inside of the aluminum cover. And then you have your 2 other bolts that are attaching. This one right here attaches to another chain tensioner, and then this bolt right here is which holds the motor and attaches the motor to the cover. And I remove this one as well, and then continue your way down the cover frame, and then you can continue on. Once all of the bolts have been removed, then you will be able to remove the aluminum cover to access the interior of the chains along with the chain tensioners. Slide the aluminum cover off to the side, and as you'll know, the chain tensioners all look intact on this unit, but in your instance you may be looking at a chain tensioner that has come loose or the chain has jumped off of the tensioner. When putting the tensioner back together, it doesn't matter which way the chains go onto the tensioner, just as long as the chains are on the correct sprocket. The sprockets come off of the drive shaft on the motor end, and you'll notice that there's a chain in this location and then in this location, one going to the right post, one going to the left post. When the motor side's in this position, it is imperative that you do not turn the key. Turning the key will allow the motor to move along with the chains, which will cause you to be out on your alignment when you put the aluminum cover frame back on over top of the chains. This next part of the video I will be showing you how to remove a jack from the motor side. The best way to do this is to slide the jack, whatever jack side that you're going to work on, over so that you can remove the chain from the drive shaft. Simply remove it from the drive shaft. At this point in time, if you want, you can take the chain tensioners off and put them off to the side. Notice that there's 2 chain tensioners per motor side jack. Just put them off to the side. The motor side jack tensioner simply looks like this. one chain goes through the upper part of the chain tensioner, and then one chain goes through the bottom side of the chain tensioner. Earlier on in the video I did note that it doesn't matter which chain goes through which side of the chain tensioner. This doesn't matter at all. You can just put it back to whatever way you want to put it back in. Once the chain tensioners have been removed, simply chain, lay it down, and at this point in time what you want to do is you want to find where the link is, the connecting link on the chain, so that you can remove it, so that you can remove the chain from the jack. Once you've located the chain connecting link, I use a pair of needle nose pliers. Just pry back on the connecting link just to pop off the C-clip. Once the C-clip has been removed, put it in a safe place as not to lose it. It's just another backing plate on the back side of the chain. At this point you can remove it from the link, and then you can remove the chain from the sprockets. Now, at this point in time, you have to remember to remove the chain guards. The chain guards are just located one up top on the top side of the jack, one on the bottom side of the jack. Once you've removed those, then the chain can be, and just grab the chain and pull it up and out. This next part of the video will be rethreading the chain link back down through the jack. Not a hard procedure, a little tedious at times. Just continue to feed the chain back down through the jack. Once it's threaded back through, we'll just attach it, we will be attaching it to the back onto the sprocket, and then putting our C-clip and our backing plate back onto the chain. When you get to this position, you can put in the back half of the chain back down through the sprockets. What I try and do is I try and even it back out just to make sure that both sides will be even once I get back through. When your chain is properly situated on the sprockets, you can then install your chain guides back into the bottom of the jack, and these are screwed back into place. At this point in time, the jack can be put back into place and the chain can be laid out. Just looped around the mounting bracket for the motor and installed back on to the motor, onto the drive shaft onto the motor, and then you can install your chain tensioners, and they don't have to be in perfect positioning at this point in time, just because we will have to move them later on in the video when we put the aluminum cover back on. You'll notice that your chain tensioner is back on in both places. You do have quite a bit of slack in the chain, and at that point you can just slide the jack back to add tension onto the chain. And at this point in time you are set to put the aluminum frame cover back into place. Some things that you'll need to know when putting the chain tensioners back on and when realigning the jacks before you put the aluminum cover back on or cover frame back on is that you don't want one of the chains to be tight with lots of tension and then the bottom chain to have no tension at all. What you want to do to eliminate this is attach the tensioner that's closest to the motor, hook that back up, and then take your 1/2 inch ratchet and give yourself a couple turns just manually so that you can get both chains with relative tension on them, so that they have this kind of look. And they can even be a little bit tighter than this, but this would work as well. This will just ease the aluminum cover going for when you put it back on. And then And at this point in time, you're ready and set to put the aluminum cover frame back on. At this point in time in the video, what you'll want to do is to lay down the aluminum frame cover right beside the jacks all the way across. The reason why we're doing this is so that we can line up the tensioner guides with the holes in the cover. As there's a hole on the tensioner guide where the bolt has to go through, the 7/16 inch bolt has to go through this hole to hold the tensioner in place so that the chain is always tight. Once you've put the frame cover back on and installed all the bolts, then you can tighten up and reassemble the posts back to how they were when you disassembled it. Once you have the cover, the aluminum cover all lined up with the chain tensioners inside of the cover, you can start putting back in your bolts and tightening everything back down, and you've completed the reassembly portion of the motor side of the jacks. The aluminum cover frame has been reassembled. Your screws and bolts are all back into place, especially the motor mounting bolts, one located right here, another one located right here, and then all of your other bolts as you move down are all connected and you're good to go there. It's now time to remove the jack locking bolts that we installed at the beginning, or the vice grips that we had that were located right about here, whatever one you decided to use. So now that we're in this position, we'll attach the 1/2 inch ratchet, and we'll be going clockwise so that we can remove the bolts from the top of the jacks that we installed. So I go about 3/4 of a turn, should be fine. And while I'm rotating that, I want to put my hand on the bolt that we put in. We can remove the bolt at this time. It's safe. The jack is not going to spring up. Everything is good there. Just grab the extrusions, slide them up and over. Make sure they're snug down on the bottom of where the jack foot is. For our extrusion, slide it down over top. Just make sure it's snug. And at this point in time, we're not going to install the screw in the bottom of the aluminum extrusion as of yet, because first off we're going to run the motor up and get our jacks up in the air, and then we may have to do some adjustments on the limit switches by removing our guide that holds on to the sprockets, which locks in the limit switches. At this point, we're going to run the jacks up into the air. All I want to do is we want to make sure that our height is going to be perfect. Wherever we're going too high, the jacks may continue all the way up, but on the bottom of the jack, what may happen is that the jacks will actually start to lift the bottom extrusion up. If this starts to happen, then we're going to have to adjust the limits on the motor. So again, we'll go back to removing the bolt that holds on the guide for the sprockets, and then we'll have to adjust the sprockets either towards the limit switch or away from the limit switch. Again, I will mention that the bottom limit switch is for the lower the unit, and the upper limit switch is what stops it when it reaches its full potential height. Right now you'll note that the sprocket is up against the limit, and which cuts off power for the lifting of the unit.